Every single generation thinks they figured out money. The greatest generation survived the Depression and swore they'd never go broke again. The boomers built careers, bought houses, and called themselves smart investors. Gen X watched the dot-com bubble burst and said never again. Millennials got burned by 2008 and promised themselves they'd do things differently. And right now, Gen Z is out here convinced that crypto, side hustles, and TikTok finance tips have finally cracked the code. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Every single one of them made the exact same mistake. Not similar mistakes, the exact same one. And the scary part, you're probably making it right now too. Before we get into this, I want to ask you something real quick. Drop in the comments where you're watching this from. Whether it's New York, London, Dubai, or anywhere else in the world, let me know. I love seeing where this community is coming from, and honestly, it tells me a lot about how this topic hits different depending on where you live. Now, let's talk about what this mistake actually is, because it's not what most finance channels will tell you. It's not overspending, it's not failing to invest early, it's not even debt, though all of those things are symptoms. The real mistake, the root of everything, is this. Every generation optimizes for the life they can see, not the life that's actually coming. Think about that for a second. They look at the world as it is right now and make all their financial decisions based on that snapshot. They don't plan for the version of the world that's arriving 10 years from now. And by the time that new world shows up, they're financially unprepared for it. Every single time, across every single generation. Here's how this plays out in real life. Your grandparents' generation lived through hard times and built a belief system around job security and loyalty. Work for one company for 40 years, get a pension, retire comfortable. That was the plan. And for a while, it worked. But they didn't see deregulation coming. They didn't see corporations cutting pension programs. They didn't see the shift from defined benefit plans to 401k accounts, which put all the investment risk on the worker instead of the company. Millions of people who did everything right by the rules of their time ended up financially exposed because the world changed the rules on them. They optimized for a system that quietly stopped existing. Then came the boomers. They looked at their parents, saw the stability of home ownership, and made real estate the centerpiece of everything. Buy a house, it always goes up. That's the plan. And for decades, it did go up. So they doubled down. They took equity out of their homes to fund lifestyles, to fund vacations, to fund the image of success. They didn't seriously consider that a housing market can collapse. They didn't plan for medical costs that would eat retirement savings whole. They optimized for a world where the market only went one direction, and 2008 reminded them that gravity still exists. Gen X came in a little more skeptical, a little more independent. They saw both of those lessons and said, fine, I'll rely on myself. They built careers, invested in the stock market, started taking retirement accounts more seriously. But they also grew up in the golden age of consumer credit. Credit cards, car loans, buy now, pay later before it even had that name. The mistake wasn't that they borrowed money. The mistake was that they borrowed money to maintain a lifestyle standard that kept inflating every single year. The lifestyle creep was silent and steady, and by the time most Gen Xers hit their peak RN years, they had peak expenses to match. They never actually built the gap between income and spending that creates real wealth. Now look at millennials. They came in during the worst financial crisis in modern history, got buried in student debt, watched homeownership become a fantasy, and pivoted hard into the gig economy and digital income. Smart, adaptive, resourceful. But the mistake crept in quietly again. A lot of millennials over-indexed on experiences over assets. There's a whole cultural narrative about spending on travel and memories instead of things. And while there's nothing wrong with living your life, the math doesn't care about your Instagram grid. Experiences don't compound. Investments do. Many millennials are now in their 30s and early 40s with great stories and weak balance sheets, and the same generational trap is closing around them. And Gen Z,
And I say this with respect because I genuinely think this generation has more financial awareness than any before them, but Gen Z is falling into its own version of the exact same trap. The mistake is showing up as over-rotation into high-risk, high-volatility assets. Crypto, meme stocks, speculative plays. The belief that if you're smart enough and fast enough, you can shortcut decades of wealth building into a few big wins. Some people will win. Most won't. And the ones who don't will spend their 30s rebuilding from zero, just like every generation before them who thought they found a shortcut that the previous generation was too slow to see. So what's the pattern underneath all of this? Why does this keep happening? It comes down to something called recency bias combined with social anchoring. Recency bias means your brain overweights whatever just happened and assumes it will keep happening. If the market went up for 10 years, your brain says it'll keep going up. If real estate doubled in value, your brain says it'll keep doubling. Your brain is not trying to trick you. It's using the best information it has. But that information is always from the past. And social anchoring is what happens when the people around you are all making the same financial moves. When your entire social circle is buying houses or flipping crypto or taking out debt to invest, it feels like the right thing to do because everyone you respect is doing it. The groupthink becomes invisible because it's everywhere.
The financial system doesn't correct for these biases. In fact, it profits from them. Banks profit when you borrow. Investment platforms profit when you trade. Real estate agents profit when you buy. Advertisers profit when you spend. The entire economic infrastructure around you is built to encourage you to optimize for right now, not for the next 20 years. So breaking this pattern requires something that doesn't come naturally and isn't rewarded socially: delayed optimization. Building a financial life around what the world will look like in 15 years, not what it looks like today. What does that actually mean practically? It means investing in assets that are still relevant regardless of which economic era you're living in. It means keeping your fixed expenses low enough that a major economic shift doesn't immediately threaten your survival. It means building multiple income streams instead of betting everything on one system staying stable. It means thinking about healthcare costs, inflation, and longevity not as distant abstract problems, but as mathematical certainties you need to account for today. And it means being deeply suspicious anytime a financial strategy feels universally obvious and socially rewarded, because historically, those are exactly the moments right before the correction. The good news is that once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it. You start to watch for it in real time. You start to ask different questions before making financial decisions. Not just, is this smart right now, but will this still make sense in 15 years if the world changes significantly? That question alone will save you from most of the traps that swallow generations whole. Every generation has had smart people in it. Every generation has had people who worked hard and tried to do the right thing financially. And every generation has still walked into this same mistake, just wearing different clothes. The question is whether your generation, whether you specifically, will be the one that finally breaks the cycle.